Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and I'm here today to talk about the fun event that's the Mid-Year Mystery Madness. This is an event that is being hosted by quite a few different booktubers. I found out about it actually from Steve Donahue, but it is being hosted by LizzieFayeLovesBooks. There's also Latin Lector, Remembered Reads, The Redhead is Reading, Too Fond of Books, and Disis19 Hearts, and Pretty Brown Eye Reader. This is really a celebration. They do apparently a big Mystery Madness celebration in March. I wasn't on BookTube in March, so I didn't get to participate in that, but I really want to participate in this one. And because I don't read instructions, I didn't realize it was only for this week, the 12th through the 18th. I know, I didn't read it, so I have already read a bunch of mystery books that I thought I would talk about today, and then talk about a couple that I do have planned hopefully to read this week, and one that I'm currently reading and how those two relate. So I will leave all of the links of all of the hosts of Mid-Year Mystery Madness in my description for you, though, so please definitely go check out all of their channels. Unfortunately, I missed the live show that happened this weekend, ironically because I think I was on a call talking about Agatha Christie. So I know, who knows? So what have I read? What did I pick up for this? And then what will I be reading for the rest of the month? So the first thing that I picked up kind of, and this has like a sub genre theme to it. And, you know, I kind of did that, but basically if you read, I think if you read pretty much any mystery novel, it qualifies for this. So the first book I want to talk about is one I had in digital form, and I did actually pick it up with Mid-Year Mystery Madness in mind, and that is One Way by Jeff Lane. I'll put up a book cover here for you. This book was actually recommended to me by Steve, talks about books and stuff, and I don't believe he actually recommended it as a mystery, but as a thriller. And there is a murder mystery kind of component to it, but it isn't a traditional murder mystery novel. It is one that I picked up specifically more for the kind of the sub-genre of an independent author, because that is something that I don't tend to read a lot. So what is One Way about? One Way follows a character whose name is Barry, and Barry is doing some very mundane tasks in the beginning, you know, just shoveling snow and getting ready for his work day, and you get the bomb dropped on you that Barry does not have long to live. And then through the rest of the novel, you're following Barry with that knowledge that he doesn't have long to live. And you get to really like Barry and get to know Barry, and you get these drops of information that says this point is kind of important later. And at the end of, I believe it was the first chapter, you get a little bit of a magical kind of component dropped onto you that makes you think maybe does Barry have a chance of surviving, even though you've been told ahead of time that he does not have long to live. So the point of view switches kind of all over the place with this, but it's very, very easy to follow. It switches from Barry then to his wife in the future the next day when she realizes that her husband has not come home, and then also will switch back to Barry and then switch back to his wife. So you're switching time periods, you're switching perspectives. There's even just a perspective that is really, really troubling, but very fascinating in this book. And I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. It is 100% a thrill ride of a mystery, not really of a mystery, but it is a thrill ride of just, trying to figure out what will happen to Barry. And all along, like I said, you're really just hoping he has the ability to get out of it alive. And yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. The magical component of it was the one part that wasn't my favorite piece of it, but I understand why it was there. But it was absolutely a really, really fun read. I would encourage you to pick it up if it sounds like that's something that would interest you, if you like multiple points of view and multiple time periods. It was really, really good. But yeah, that was One Way by Jeff Lane. So the next book is kind of from my thoughts around subgenre, was really a new to me author, and that is one that I did have on my September TBR, which is The Great Mistake by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. This is one that I picked up because Kevy over at Stay Kevy was hosting a read along of that this month. We read about 4 chapters per day and discussed it in the Group Reads channel. So Mary Roberts Reinhardt has written a very large number of murder mystery novels. This is my first read of any of her work. I had not read anything. And the interesting thing with this one is this book was written in 1940, but it does not feel dated to me. When you read it, it could have just as easily been written now, which I thought was really, really fascinating. It follows, it's narrated by a character whose name is Patricia Abbott, and she is Maud Wainwright's personal assistant and secretary, and is helping her with like the daily tasks. And you go along, and then of course there's a murder, and you have to try and figure out who did this particular murder. Lots of twists and turns, lots of different red herrings, lots of miscues as far as what's really going on, and lots and lots and lots of murder in this book. There isn't just one crime to solve. There's a missing persons, and then there's someone in the house that they're not expecting, and all of this different stuff going on in this book. And it was full of a lot of twists and turns. My one issue with this book, sorry, let's go backwards. One of the things with this that I thought was really interesting, unlike some of the other mysteries, is there's not really an investigator that you're following with this, because the perspective is told by Pat. You are following her perspective. You're not really following like Inspector Poirot's investigation or anything like that. So this one, you're following Pat, and I thought that was a really clever way to do that. The other thing Mary Roberts Reinhardt does a very good job of is dropping a big bomb at the end of a chapter and then completely going on to something else, so that you're sitting there going, well, but what happened? And what do you mean that that person doesn't have long to live? Or what do you mean that something happened to the wife, or those kinds of things? Or what do you mean that someone was shot? And you don't get to find out more than that for quite a while. It is absolutely a really interesting story. It has a lot of characters in this book. My one issue with this one is that towards the end, I was ready to stop having more questions and start getting answers. And I wasn't getting answers until like the last chapter. And then at that point, I think I was starting to try and read it so quickly that I missed some of what actually happened. And Kevy, who is a wonderful host, by the way, actually helped explain everything and say, okay, this is what was really going on. But it did detract a little bit from the book for me to not be able to, not be able to not figure it out, but not be able to kind of work my way through who the actual murderer was, that there wasn't someone in the story really helping kind of guide you through that. And so I missed something with that. But I do think it's an interesting one. What I really think this one needs is a reread at some point, because I missed, I think, a lot of clues in this. And I think a reread definitely would help me. Probably a reread of like the last few chapters maybe would bring it into focus for me, perhaps. But yeah, Mary Roberts Reinhardt, that is actually the second book. We actually read this starting the first, so like I said, I don't follow directions and didn't realize it was only for this week, but that is the other mystery I wanted to talk about. So the next one is one that was on my September TBR as well, and it was for Christie Fest. I'm going to include it here because this is just mysteries that I've talked about so far this month, and that is actually Mrs. Mcgintys Dead by Agatha Christie. So this one is, if you're not familiar with Agatha Christie, she's written a very large amount of murder mystery novels. This is a Poirot novel, so her famous detective. And this particular one, if you look on the back, is really far down in the list of books. So it is well into Poirot's history as a detective. So one of the things with that, there are a lot of characters in this book that have made appearances in other books, and I didn't pick up on those references because I hadn't read a couple of those earlier books where they had shown up. This one is also really interesting because right from page 1, Mrs. McGinty is dead. A lot of times in Agatha Christie's novels, you have a murder that occurs while you're reading the book, and then Poirot investigates. Either he was there or he was called in to investigate. In this one, Mrs. McGinty is dead, and the person has already been convicted of the crime. But Superintendent Spence decides that doesn't think he's really guilty, even though Superintendent Spence was the one who put the case together, and calls in Poirot to try and solve the mystery. And this one was such a fun read, even though obviously it has to do with a mystery. There were, again, a lot of twists and turns. There was a lot of red herrings. There were a lot of clues given that I missed and didn't understand what was fully going on. There's a really dysfunctional household in this that is hilarious. There's also some things to do with like Poirot's ego and how he kind of gets taken down a little bit in this book a little bit. I didn't know how much Christie did not like Poirot at one point, and some of that comes through, I think, in this. The thing that I think that Christie did really, really well in this book is gave you a limited set of possibles as far as who it could be, as far as who the murderer could be. And so when you go through, you kind of have this set of 4 possible kind of relationships that it could end up being. And in the end, it was very well explained as far as how Poirot walked us through the actual end and who actually did it. And that was kind of the difference between this one and this one, if I can turn it the right way, where you didn't have that kind of detective walking you through it, and you did have the detective kind of walking you through it. Definitely, I can't turn books the right way today. Definitely just a slight difference between those two. From a subgenre perspective, this is just another one in the Poirot list. It doesn't really follow a subgenre other than I read a murder mystery, and a classic Agatha Christie murder mystery, which I absolutely adored. So I did give it a fairly high rating. I think I gave it a 4-star out there, much to the group's, I almost got voted off the group because apparently this is one of Lil from Lil's Vintage World's favorite Agatha Christie's, and I voted it a 4. I was worried I was going to get voted out of the group after that, but it was a really fun discussion hosted by Julie over at The Hungry Bookworm and Lil at Lil's Vintage World. And we had a wonderful conversation on Discord over the weekend about this book. And I laughed and laughed and laughed. That group was absolutely hilarious. But that is the 3rd book of murder mysteries that I have read so far this month. And these books, when you look at them too, this book, it is very well spaced. It looks like it's much bigger than it is. This is a book you can easily read in a day. It doesn't, because of how spaced it is, this version of it makes it look like it's that standard kind of length, but it is actually a fairly short book. So the 4th book that I did end up picking up, and this one is not on my, this is not in my TBR at all. I don't have it because I bought it as an ebook. And if you've watched my channel at all, or not at all, but if you watched my channel before, you may have heard me talk about this series and this author, which is the In Death series by J.D. Robb. I was not aware that she had a new book coming out, and iBooks kindly helped me remember that, yeah, hey, book 53 in the series is coming out today, and don't you want this book? You really want this book, right? And so, of course, I said, absolutely, I want this book, and I bought it as an ebook, and I read it in 2 days, I think. Yikes. And editing me, I didn't say the name of the book, which is Forgotten in Death by J.D. Robb, which is, again, the 53rd book in the In Death series. And yes, did I put away a couple of the books that were on my September TBR in order to read that? Yep, I did. But I had a lot of fun reading this book. If you're not familiar with the series, it follows a police detective whose name is Eve Dallas, and she is a kick-ass female police lieutenant who doesn't take crap from anyone and is always investigating either really complicated murders or interconnected murders. She has a crew of characters that help her along the way. Everyone from her husband, who is of course the billionaire, gorgeous man, good in electronics, good in everything that can help her, to her partner, whose name is Peabody, to the medical examiner, whose name is Morris. So she has a wide variety of people helping her through this. And this one starts out with a body in a dumpster, and Eve has to try and figure out what happened to this person in the dumpster. And then there's quickly a second body that is found at a neighboring work site, and you have to try and figure out, okay, are these two connected? Are they independent? J.D. Robb will frequently put more than one kind of connected murder together. And in this one, there's 3 different crimes that happen, and you have to try and figure out, okay, is this really all connected, not connected? Do a really good job of walking you through it. And I was worried it was going to be a little bit predictable as far as how that would work out. Turns out I was very surprised by that. I had a lot of fun reading this, but reading 53 books in a series, yeah, I better like those characters by now. One of the things I do want to talk about a little bit with this series, though, that I find is really fascinating is that after 53 books, the characters keep growing. They keep moving along in their life. They keep experiencing new things, keep having different life events. I've read some other books that have 20-something in the series, and the characters just get stagnant. They don't move at all. After 20 books, I expect you to understand, okay, that relationship may or may not be working out. And in J.D. Robb's books, all of the characters are slowly moving along in their lives, and which is something I've always appreciated about this series. The other thing with this series that I really like is she tends to write very powerful women and women in very powerful positions of authority, and that is something that I really appreciate about this writing and about this series. But it is just a fun murder mystery with some romance thrown in. And you just go through and try and figure out who did it. But it was the 4th book, if you can believe that, the 4th murder mystery thriller type book that I have read in September, and it's the 14th. I've lost my mind. Okay, so with that, let's talk about what I have left and what would actually qualify for this week for the mid-year mystery madness that I would like to try and read. So the first thing is I get to show you a new purchase, which I'm so excited about. I finally found a complete Sherlock Holmes. I have a video out there that talks about my lesson learned of finding a Sherlock Holmes at a half-price bookstore that wasn't actually Sherlock Holmes, but this one I found at Barnes & Noble, and oh my gosh, yes, I absolutely love it. I had to, of course, buy it, and so it has a beautiful cover, a beautiful end, and then the end papers are also really cool. It has, of course, the gold on the edges, and this is my most recent purchase, and the book that I really want to read out of this is actually a reread for me, which is The Hound of the Baskervilles, and it has been years and years and years since I read that. I would love to get to that this week. And why do I want to get to that? Because in this, there is a character who is very Sherlock Holmes-like, and his name is William of Baskerville. So I really would love to read this one, since I am reading this one. This one technically could qualify for a murder mystery, and yes, I am reading it this week, but yeah, this one I've been reading since the 1st of whatever month this is, September. I have been reading this since the 1st of September, so yeah, but really, I want to read this for mid-year mystery madness. Not the whole book, but The Hound of the Baskervilles is the one I think I'm going to focus on for now, and just call that hopefully one of my last murder mystery or my murder mystery madness that would actually qualify me for this week. But those are the 5 or 6, I don't even know now, different mystery books that I have played with or read this week. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of those or if you're interested in reading any of those. I've had so much fun getting to join, like I said, Chrissy Fest and Kevy's Read Along, as well as reading an independent book recommended by another booktuber. And then my favorite series came out. It's like, this is my ideal September for murder mystery books. I had so much fun. As always, though, like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if you've read any of these. And as usual, until next time, everyone, thanks.